glass of wine a day, which is not that much. According to some people, it increases the risk of breast cancer by 40%. When I think about my patients who have all these hormonal dysregulations, the sex hormone in particular and insulin, it's even the stress hormones, it's our diet is super high in sugar and starch. So carbohydrates are okay, but where are you getting them from? Are they whole grains? Are they beans? Are they vegetables? Are they fruit? Or is it flour and sugar? That matters. I think caffeine is another huge one that often adversely affects menstrual issues and hormonal problems. Alcohol is a huge one. I remember reading a study years ago that showed that if you were drinking alcohol and you were taking hormones, you with Premarin, for example, you would get toxic levels of hormones in your blood that cause cancer and other problems because of the alcohol. In fact, I think another study I read was women drank 1 glass of wine a day, which is not that much. According to some people, it increases the risk of breast cancer by 40%. That's staggering, and it has to do with how it affects estrogen and hormones. So you've got all that, and then you've got all the crap in food, all the hormones in dairy. That's a big one. Dairy, I think, is a huge one for people. And I think a lot of women with hormonal dysregulation get off dairy and they feel better. And there's 60 different hormones in milk, including growth hormones and estrogens and progesterones, and as not to mention antibiotics. So you've got all these things in our diet pretty typically that cause all these issues. And then, of course, there's all the hormone disruptors that you mentioned, the pesticides, the herbicides, all the plastics, phthalates, PCBs, dioxin, phenol, those are all flame retardants. They're in everything and everywhere, and it's hard to get rid of them. So those are all collectively causing problems. And then the stress, obviously, of how stress affects the hormone cascade, because stress is one of those hormones that connects everything together. And so you end up with this big kind of lifestyle environmental soup, not to mention the fact that only 8% get enough exercise, and sleep deprivation is massive. You add all these things together, and it's no wonder women have so many hormonal dysregulation issues.
Well, that, and I would say women are more vulnerable to them. So I think in some ways, especially for women who are still cycling, but also true for women in perimenopause and menopause, that our hormones get out of whack more easily than what we see with men. And we know that from looking at, if you just look at estrogen, which is the master regulator in the female body, the primary regulator, the kind of changes that women experience during the menstrual cycle and then in perimenopause are really steep, and they're quite sudden. They're much more abrupt than we see with men in testosterone, as an example. Yeah, and I'm so glad you raised alcohol, because, I read the same data, and I think it's important to realize that the glass of wine that you're having every single night, you're treating something with it. Wow. You're treating stress. You're trying to, kind of settle your nervous system. At least that was the case for me and for many of my patients. And we know that 3 servings a week is associated with an increased risk of breast cancer. Yeah. So as you described it, it creates more of what I think of as the Homer Simpson type of estrogen molecules, the ones that we don't want. We want the benevolent type of estrogen molecules, and you're not going to get that from alcohol.